All right, last time we read, we had just read about Sam the Onion Man, who lived in the same town as Catherine Barlow, and he sold onions for everything. And he had a donkey named Mary Lou, and they would go in his boat, and they would go to the other side of the lake, and they'd pick their onions from his special onion patch. And people would come to him when they were sick, and he would tell them to eat different parts of the onion to help them feel better. And that's kind of where we're at. So here we go. Whenever Catherine Barlow bought onions, she always bought an extra one or two and would let Mary Lou eat them out of her hand. Something wrong? Sam asked her one day as she was feeding Mary Lou. You seem distracted. Oh, it's just the weather, said Miss Catherine. It looks like rain clouds are moving in. Me and Mary Lou, we like the rain, said Sam. Oh, I like it fine, Miss Catherine said as she rubbed the donkey's rough hair on top of its head. It's just that the roof leaks in the schoolhouse. I can fix that, said Sam. What are you going to do? Catherine joked. Fill the holes with onion paste? Sam laughed. I'm good with my hands, he told her. I built my own boat. If it leaked, I'd be in big trouble. Catherine couldn't help but notice his strong, firm hands. So they made a deal. He agreed to fix the leaky roof in exchange for 6 jars of spiced peaches. It took Sam a week to fix the roof, because he could only work in the afternoons, after school let out and before night classes began. Sam wasn't allowed to attend classes because he was a Negro, but they let him fix the building. Miss Catherine usually stayed in the schoolhouse grading papers and such while Sam worked on the roof, and she enjoyed what little conversation they were able to have, shouting up and down to each other. She was surprised by his interest in poetry. When he took a break, she would sometimes read a poem to him. On more than one occasion, she would start to read a poem by Poe or Longfellow, only to hear him finish it for her, from memory. She was sad when the roof was finished. Is something wrong? He asked. No, you did a wonderful job, she said. It's just that the windows don't open. The children and I would enjoy a breeze now and then. I can fix that, said Sam. She gave him 2 more jars of peaches, and Sam fixed the windows. It was easier to talk to him when he was working on the windows. He told her about his secret onion field on the other side of the lake, where the onions grow all year round, and where the water runs uphill. When the windows were fixed, she complained that her desk wobbled. I can fix that, said Sam. The next time she saw him, she mentioned that the door doesn't hang straight, and she got to spend another afternoon with him while he fixed the door. By the end of the first semester, Onion Sam had turned the old run-down schoolhouse into a well-crafted, freshly painted jewel of a building that the whole town was proud of. People passing by would stop and admire it. That's our schoolhouse. It shows just how much we value education here in Green Lake. The only person who wasn't happy with it was Miss Catherine. She'd run out of things needing to be fixed. She sat at her desk one afternoon listening to the pitter-patter of the rain on the roof. No water leaked into the classroom, except for the few drops that came from her eyes. Onions! Hot, sweet onions! Sam called out on the street. She ran to him. She wanted to throw her arms around his neck, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. So instead she hugged Mary Lou. Is something wrong? He asked her. Oh, Sam, she said. My heart is breaking. I can fix that, said Sam. She turned to him. He took hold of both of her hands and kissed her. Because of the rain, there was nobody else out on the street. Even if there was, Catherine and Sam wouldn't have noticed. They were lost in their own world. At that moment, however, Hattie Parker stepped out of the general store. They didn't see her, but she saw them, and she pointed her quivering finger in their direction and whispered, You'll be punished. Oh no. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. I'm going to tell you what happens. So, back in those days, when the 110 years ago, when they were talking about this time, Sam, who was a black man, they weren't allowed to kiss each other because Catherine was white, Sam was black, and so that was against the rules because there was this segregation, this separation of people based on the color of their skin. So when people knew that Miss Catherine had kissed Sam, they got really mad, and they ended up killing Sam because of it. And that made Catherine so sad that she kind of went crazy because she was so upset that they had killed this person that she loved so much. And so she kind of went crazy from it. And so then it skips ahead a little bit and it talks about how Catherine, she's a little bit crazy, and Trout Walker comes back. And Catherine is telling Trout how she buried this treasure somewhere in Camp Green Lake. And Trout Walker says, "You better tell me where you buried the treasure." And she says, "I will never tell you where you buried the treasure." And then she gets bit by one of those yellow spotted lizards that it talks about in the beginning. And she ends up dying too. So she never tells anybody where the treasure is, but they know that there's a treasure buried somewhere in Green Lake. And she dies before she tells anybody what happens. So kind of sad. But that's where this then picks up. So here we go. We're back to Stanley. Stanley dug his shovel into the ground. His hole was about 3.5 feet deep in the center. He grunted as he pried up some dirt and then flung it off to the side. The sun was almost directly overhead. He glanced at his canteen lying beside his hole. He knew that it was half full, but he didn't take a drink just yet. He knew he had to drink sparingly because he didn't know who would be driving the water truck the next time it came. 3 days had passed since the warden had scratched Mr. Sir, and every time Mr. Sir delivered water, he poured Stanley's water straight onto the ground. Fortunately, Mr. Pendanski delivered the water more often than Mr. Sir. Mr. Pendanski was obviously aware of what Mr. Sir was doing because he always gave Stanley a little extra. He'd fill Stanley's canteen and then let Stanley take a long drink and then fill it up again. It helped, too, that Zero was digging some of Stanley's hole for him. Although, as Stanley had expected, the other boys did not like to see Stanley sitting around while they were working. They'd say things like, "Who died and made you king?" Or, "It must be nice to have your own personal slave." When he tried pointing out that he was the one who took the blame for the sunflower seeds, the other boys said that it was his fault because he was the one who spilled them. "I risked my life for those seeds," Magnet had said. "All I got was one lousy handful." Stanley tried to explain that he needed to save his energy so he could teach Zero how to read, but the other boys just made fun of him. "Same old story, ain't it, Armpit?" X-Ray had said. "The white boy sits around while the black boy does all the work. Ain't that right, Caveman?" "No, that's not right," Stanley replied. "No, it ain't," X-Ray agreed. "It ain't right at all." Stanley dug another shovel full of dirt.